What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, so before I get into this video, I want to give a big shout out to the brother Zach Hankins for the $15 donation via the Cash App. Much respect to you for showing love to Too Raw for TV. All right, so former Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard has officially endorsed former President Donald Trump for a second term as president. The former Democrat who left the party back in 2022 and is a registered independent made the endorsement a couple of days ago. I think it might have been Wednesday. She said in this endorsement that the country cannot afford to have Kamala Harris as president. You may recall back in 2019 in one of the Democratic primary debates, she absolutely bodied Kamala Harris. Matter of fact, that began the tailspin of Kamala Harris as a viable candidate to the point where she didn't even last until 2020. She didn't even make it to the primaries. Her campaign folded back in December of 2019 when she was only polling 8% support in her own state. But now all of a sudden she's Barack Obama 2.0. Anyway, she said back then, quote, about Kamala Harris and attacking her prosecutorial record in California, quote, she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. Tulsi Gabbard also brought up that she was, quote, deeply concerned about Harris's record as a prosecutor in many other ways, including, quote, she kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep a cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way. And recently, she said that Kamala is, quote, an empty suit, which is a term you may have heard me use about Kamala Harris as well. And on Thursday, Gabbard labeled Harris, quote, an empty suit, arguing her campaign handlers are worried about what will happen if she has to explain her policy positions. She said, quote, I think she revealed that in that July 2019 debate, the same thing I think her campaign handlers are worried about right now. Kamala Harris is an empty suit. They are trying to create this new version of Kamala Harris to match what their pollsters are telling them, so she can say whatever she needs to say to try to win over voters, which is the most offensive thing because they think we're so stupid as to forget what her record actually is. She also went on to say, referring to her 2019 debate with Harris, Gabbard said the exchange exposed the vice president's hypocrisy, which is still relevant to this year's election. What she said was very different than what she actually did, and she had no answer for it. She had no explanation. She didn't even try to own or justify what her actions were. And that's going to be the key thing here for voters as we head into this election, is Kamala Harris will say whatever she thinks she needs to say. Now, this is the thing. Will her endorsement have any impact? If you listen to the left-wing media, they'll say no. I'm going to say possibly, yes. Now, because we're in such a polarized electorate, when I say that, I mean that most voters feel one way or the other. They're either strongly Republican, strongly Democratic, and there aren't that many swing voters anymore. Not like how it used to be when it used to be going into an election, 40% already were going to vote Democratic, 40% were going to vote Republican, and you had 20% of the pie to work with. Now it's more around 47. And then you have 5 or 6% to work with. That's why there's been a reduction of swing states. It used to be 30 swing states. Now it's like 10. If that, might be more like 5, 6, or 7. But this is the thing. Tulsi Gabbard, of course, served in the military. She reached the rank of lieutenant colonel. She served in the Iraqi war. Some people call her a Russian asset and all those different things. I noticed that all these attacks on her started when she began criticizing the Biden administration. Tulsi has always been Tulsi. Tulsi used to criticize Obama. Tulsi's a Democrat, but I think she's more of a Democrat in the vein of a Jimmy Carter or maybe even a John F. Kennedy. She's an anti-interventionist, okay? Now, this is how I want to explain this. I don't know Tulsi Gabbard, obviously. None of us do. But you got to understand that one of the reasons why some people were critical of the Bush administration is that they weren't fond of neoconservatism, which is basically the belief that America is this beacon of what's right. And America should have a voice in the world. America should be the world's police. And basically, usually neoconservatives believe in unitarianism. They don't believe in consensus building when it comes to basically what George Bush did in Iraq. You know, we should lead the charge into being the top cop in the world, and America should influence what other countries do. And to me, and I mean other people, I'm like, we got our own problems here. We got our own shit to deal with in our country. Tulsi Gabbard, no matter how you feel about her, she served over there. She served. She saw people that she served with die. She knows people that she served with who did survive, be maimed, and some of them not just physically maimed, but mentally scarred. Some people committed unalived themselves. Don't want to say that word on YouTube. They unalived themselves. So, yeah, if you've seen the horrors of war, you don't want to see people or this country get into unnecessary wars because you know how it really is. It's not a fucking video game. It's a real deal. So when you see these same individuals who 20 years ago were so against the Iraqi war, suddenly all of a sudden, even though we don't have a physical presence of troops over there, we're still funding wars. And eventually it can escalate to the point when you have all these wars that we're getting entangled with in our foreign policy, the risk rises of us actually becoming actively involved in a war. So, yeah, that's why people like Donald, and I'm not, listen to me, let me be perfectly clear. I'm not calling myself a Trump supporter. But this is why people like Tulsi Gabbard and Donald Trump were so fervently against Bush on his foreign policy. But they're looking at what the Democrats have done because Obama did the same damn thing. That's what turned me against Obama was, man, you're from Kenya, bro. You got Kenyan blood running through your veins. And look what you're engaging with. Look what you're associating yourself with in Africa. So, there's that, so largely on that, and I would say some of the social issues, because the Democratic Party, which I used to call myself like a caucus, I caucus with them, whatever, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. I'm not going to make this about myself. A lot of people are turned off by some of the things within the Democratic Party as far as social justices that they have snagged on to, some of the movements. And I'm not talking about quote unquote civil rights movement. I'm talking about, what I'm talking about. Some of these other things that they champion, some people who are more conservative in nature, they don't rock with. Okay. That's turned off many people. So when you look at the fact that former Democrats like RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard and many others are aligning themselves with the Trump administration, that should be a bit of a warning sign to people like Kamala Harris and others who are supporters of her. Don't fall for the media okey doke that, oh, Kamala's surging and all of this crap. It's a close race. But you know what I'm saying? Will Tulsi have an impact? I think to a certain extent. She's relatively young. She's only 43 years old. Actually, that is young politically. It's 43 years old. She's, in my opinion, very attractive. And another thing that she can do, and I think this is why Donald Trump was so off-putting with Kamala. If he attacks her too harshly, as you're seeing with the left-wing media, he gets accused of being a misogynist. I've been accused of being a misogynist, you know, when I attack Kamala Harris politically. It's a dicey thing when you're a male. I remember when Hillary Clinton ran against, I think his name was Rick Lazio, for Senate in 2000. Whenever he attacked her in those debates, because it was supposed to have been Giuliani against, if I remember correctly, Rudy Giuliani, who was then mayor of New York. I think he was supposed to run for Senate, but he had to bow out because he had been diagnosed with prostate cancer. But anyway, anytime Rick Lazio got tough with her, he was accused of being a misogynist. So I think you could argue that part of Tulsi Gabbard's role will be the attack dog for her, on Tulsi, and say certain things that Trump really can't get away with because he's a man. Because, and by the way, when you really look at it, isn't that sexist? Isn't that sexist to say a man can't attack a woman? Well, I don't want to say attack, but make claims against a woman politically that he can against a man? Isn't that sexist? I mean, think about it. If you're for equality, shouldn't I be able to attack your record? But if I do it, if I make the same attacks that you make against me, I'm a misogynist. So you want equality on all the good things, but anything that's bad or any of the downside things, you want me to still treat you like a woman, like whatever. But anyway, I think Tulsi can have some effect on the race. Some. Because I think the Trump campaign realizes that there's slippage when it comes to women this time. There's a lot of slippage. To be honest with you, I think, and all of us have said this before, he would have been better off running with her as a running mate. Because if you look at it, if you really look at it, this is the worst VP pick possibly ever. At least in my recent memory. Worse than Dan Quayle. Worse than Dan Quayle, man, in 88. That's why you're not seeing him like we used to. He's been sort of phased out. And in effect, if I was Trump, I would make more and more appearances with Tulsi Gabbard. Look, RFK Jr., you know, he has good ideas, but it's grating to listen to him. I'm sorry, it just is. It's unfair, I know. But Tulsi Gabbard, she's attractive. And while I don't agree with everything she's for, one thing I do know about Tulsi Gabbard is that she does not like Kamala Harris. And she can get away with saying certain things that Trump can't get away with, you know? And so that's just how I look at that, at least. But tell me what you guys think.